calling for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court.
That should be bipartisan. I don't want to hear any conservative come out against that. That would be insane to say that we shouldn't have a codified, binding code of ethics for the people who set the rules for what the rules can be.
The Supreme Court's current ethics code is weak and even more frightening, voluntary.
I'm talking shit on conservatives because, my God, maybe I've become a radicalized liberal, okay? But the conservatives in my country are wholly defined by what they hate. There should be the fear that something bad will happen to you if you decide to sell your soul as an officer of the United States. Why is this even controversial? An ethical violation is a pretty high claim. Because Congress is necessarily a partisan body, I don't think that should be the venue for the Supreme Court. Not in that way. I don't know exactly how it should go. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm a dude who almost has his degree in political science. Almost. All right? But something has to change.
It's time for us to come to see that every American gets a decent break and a fair chance to make good. And as Andy Young said, President Johnson met repeatedly with the civil rights leaders and built a coalition to bring that vision to life. And he did. He brought it to life. Over 50 years, the LBJ Foundation has convened this symposium to reflect one of the crowning achievements, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a defining moment that has since opened doors of opportunities for all Americans, regardless of race,
okay, yeah, this
sexual
isn't a fight that I can
gender,
win.
gender identity, religion, national origin. Together with the Voting Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act, these three landmark laws he signed are remarkable in their scale and their scope. Taken together, these three acts have made this nation fundamentally more fair, fundamentally more just, and most importantly, fundamentally more consistent with our founding principles. For real. And we're a better nation because of them. We must be clear. Their work, our
We must
work,
be clear.
is not done. It's not done. We do not celebrate these laws as part of our past, but as critical components of our future. President Johnson understood what President Lincoln understood in his own time, that the courts would determine the scale and scope of our laws. Over 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, President Johnson vowed, in his words, to do this job that Lincoln started, by challenging the court to live up to its constitutional responsibility. He did that by nominating Thurgood Marshall as the first black justice of the Supreme Court, and by aggressively defending civil rights throughout the courts. But now, we live in a different era. In recent years, extreme opinions that the Supreme Court has handed down have undermined long-established civil rights principles and protections. In 2013, the Supreme Court in Shelby County case gutted the Voting Rights Act, opening the floodgates to a wave of restrictive voting laws that have seen states across the country pass. In 2022, the court overruled Roe v. Wade and the right to choose that had been the law of the land for 50 years. 50 years.
One thing that concerns me, like, I think that a lot of liberals, and to be clear, I in some ways agree with them on the idea that there's obviously like something going on with the Supreme Court. There's some afoot, okay, with the Supreme Court. But both because of like I think that like one of the major components of what it means to be a conservative is you base your, and I'm sorry, Doghouse, I'm talking shit on conservatives because, my God, maybe I've become a radicalized liberal, okay? But the conservatives in my country are wholly defined by what they hate. They are anti this, anti that, anti this, and there's very few things that they are pro, unless those things are directly like to own the libs. Nah, man. Well, I mean, the best case that I could give is like the family tradition type stuff that conservatives generally hold on to, that liberals generally don't give as much about. Like, it would be nice if conservatives would like have nice, good conversations, like maybe slow the reins on some of the like the extremer liberal policies that want to go through, but they're not that. They're the exact opposition. Whatever's the opposite, whatever will trigger the libs the most is what I get out of most conservatives right now. Kevin Barrett, well, yeah, I was going to get to like the specific criticisms that I have. The specific criticisms that I have is there seems to be like some actual like extremists on the Supreme Court that are ideologically captured by Trump. I don't think it's all of the conservative justices, but I think that there are at least 2, maybe 3 that are. I don't think I would have said that about, oh shit, I see his face. What's his name? Roberts. There's a valid argument that Alito and Thomas are partisan. Yeah, I think that those are the 2 that I was thinking of. And then Roberts, I would say, after reading his majority opinion for the immunity case, that man, in his majority opinion that he wrote, fucked the executive branch. They gave them way too much, way more than even Trump was asking for. He asked for, criminal immunity, and they gave him more than he asked for. Aren't they all bought and paid for? No. I don't think that. I was like pleasantly surprised that Amy Coney Barrett wasn't as extreme as we thought she was going to be. That was pleasantly surprising. But like Alito and Thomas, bro, there is some really weird shit going on with them. Okay, some real weird shit going on with them, and the donors that they have, and the amount of money that they've gotten, and then like the fact that that money is also for some reason that them getting so much money from specific people did not play a role in them recusing themselves whatsoever from any cases that were related to those people. Like that's pretty bad, right? And again, like I'm moving from like trying to be as understanding of conservatives and trying to give more leeway in what they think, especially over the past couple of months. I've gotten way more against it because it's so blatant. No, absolutely not. They have placated they've like pushed back every single thing so that they didn't have to make a decision, or they gave Trump something way more than he was asking for every single time. Which Supreme Court do you think we're talking about? You think we're talking about the Supreme Court of 4 years ago? Do you think that we're talking about like, oh, in 2017, well, they did this thing, and yeah, they did that after they overturned it. They overturned Roe, which is probably like the least egregious thing in terms of like the incredibly large cases that they've taken on in the past couple of months. The mifepristone ban, that wasn't held up because of the merits of the case. They said that they didn't have standing, but they were willing to hear it if there was anyone that had standing. No, this is a very, very extremely highly partisan right-wing court. I'm sorry. It is really hard to make a case against that. And I don't know if you're on the train that the immunity case ruling wasn't that bad, but it was that bad. They were overly broad where they should have been incredibly narrow, and they were incredibly narrow on the parts where, oh my God, why the f- are you giving him immunity for that? They were incredibly narrow on the sorts of things that Trump, or I'm sorry, not just Trump, a president could be in trouble for, but the narrowness is anything that the president could do. And if it's something that the president could do, you have to prove that it couldn't interfere with any part of the president's duties. Otherwise, they're totally immune from it. If making something criminal or illegal for the president would interfere with whatever function they were trying to do, and they can make that argument in court, and the Supreme Court upholds it, it is almost ollie oxen free. No, I mean, respectfully, listen, I'm not going to like soy out, scream at you. Listen, I got all that out last stream, okay? I only need that one example. They gave the president God powers. Chevron was also unbelievably bad. Decision of an official act cannot be based on what the act is, but what it does. I think that they should have been. I think that Amy Coney Barrett put it best in that the court went too far. Like, of course, everyone is in agreement that the president should be protected from some criminal liability, right? Or I'm sorry, I say criminal, some liability, whether it's criminal or civil, right? Civil, they're totally immune from. Criminal, there's probably got to be some amount of criminal liability that they are free from, which I don't think anyone ever contested. What they contested was that whatever Trump is arguing for here, right, that the president has to be convicted in the Senate first before they can ever be tried for criminal liability, like outside of the court. They didn't even go, they went further than that. They said they can't even be criminally prosecuted or impeached or anything if whatever act that they took could reasonably interfere with any aspect of the president's role as commander-in-chief. Unofficial acts. But what is an unofficial act? They don't lay out anything. They don't lay out anything. And unofficial acts done in the purview of the president still are granted at least, what was this specific word? Presumptive immunity. You're supposed to presume that they're immune from even those unofficial acts unless you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this would not interfere with any aspect of the presidency. That bar is so unbelievably, egregiously high. And you could use other evidence to show they committed said crime? No, actually, no, you can't. If it's done in his official capacity, so if the president does something in his official capacity, I don't know, like talk to someone in his cabinet, right? Talk to someone in his cabinet. That's an official act. And all of that is automatically immune. You also are not able to request the evidence of them doing anything there. Yes, you could sell pardons endlessly. Yes, you could. They also refused, for some reason, to push back on the claim that Trump's legal team made that a president could use SEAL Team 6 to assassinate their political opponent. They were pretty clear on one aspect of the case that was definitely immune, but they were strangely silent on that one, even though it was mentioned in one of the dissenting opinions. And they responded to the dissenting opinions. So they knew that that was up for, interpretation, and they didn't interpret it. They left that open. No, only in the dissent. Only in the dissent, Doghouse, did they refer to that. And I'll put money down on that. Only in the dissent did they address whether or not it would be illegal for the president to assassinate his political opponent, meaning any armed force order is an official act. Yes. X rocks fist. You actually read it. I can't believe it. You've read the case.
The following year, the same court eviscerated affirmative action, which had been upheld and reaffirmed for nearly 50 years as well.
Oh yeah, affirmative action.
And now,
although there's good arguments against that.
Called Project 2025. Well, by the way, they're serious, man. They're planning another onslaught attacking civil rights in America. For example, Project 2025 calls aggressively attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion across all aspects of America. This extreme MAGA movement even proposes to end birthright citizenship. That's how far they've come. End birthright citizenship, which if you're born in America, you're an American citizen. This issue and so many other civil rights that Americans take for granted.
He said birthright.
This issue and so many other civil rights that Americans take for granted.
I didn't mishear it? Yes, you did. I just heard him say birthright.
This issue and so many other civil rights that American citizenship. That's how far they've come. The MAGA movement even proposes to end birthright citizenship. That's how far they've come.
He said birthright. You know what he said.
Which if you're born in America, you're an American citizen. That's how extreme these guys are. This issue and so many other civil rights that Americans take for granted are likely to come before the court in the years to come. And most recently and most shockingly, the Supreme Court established in Trump versus the United States a dangerous precedent. They ruled, as you know, that the President of the United States has immunity for potential crimes he may have committed while in office. Immunity. This nation was founded on the principle there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law. And for all practical purposes, the court's decision almost certainly means that the President can violate their oath, flout our laws, and face no consequences. Here's what Justice Sotomayor, Supreme Court Justice, wrote in her dissent, and I quote, "Under the majority's reasoning, the President now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders a Navy SEAL team 6 to assassinate a political rival. Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power. Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon. Immune. In every use of official power, the President is now a king above the law." Just what Justice Sotomayor wrote in her dissent. Folks, just imagine what a president could do in trampling civil rights and liberties given such immunity. The court's being used to weaponize an extreme and unchecked agenda. This decision is a total affront to the basic expectations we have for those who wield the power in this nation, that they are expected to be wholly accountable under the law. The President is no longer constrained by the law, and only limits on abuse of power will be self-imposed by the President alone. That's a fundamentally flawed view and a fundamentally flawed principle, a dangerous principle. On top of its extreme decisions, the court is mired in a crisis of ethics. These scandals involving the justices have caused public opinion to question the court's fairness and independence that are essential to faithfully carrying out its mission of equal justice under the law. For example, there are documented reports of a decades-long effort to reshape the judiciary, including the Supreme Court backed by shadow special interests that also support Project 2025. Undisclosed gift to justice is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from wealthy benefactors who have interest before the very court they're contributing to. Conflicts of interest from those connected to January 6th insurrectionists, and a blatant attack on nominating and confirming justices of the court itself. Do you all remember when Justice Scalia died in February of 2016? And the Republicans blocked the President's nomination, President Obama's nomination, to fill that vacancy for nearly a year by making up an entirely new standard that there be no confirmations of the court during an election year. But then, when Justice Ginsburg died in 2020, Republicans rushed through the President Trump's nominee at the very same time votes are being cast in an election that Trump would lose. It's outrageous. I know I don't look it, but I serve.
Do y'all remember the Lindsey Graham clip where he's like, and listen, if you think that I'm being unprincipled here, then look, if it happens again next election cycle, then you can call me a hypocrite. But this is the standard that we're setting out today. It's like, bro, you set yourself up so hard for that. You did that to yourself. My God. Because he was sitting there defending it. He's like, yep, I am a hypocrite. And I'll do it again. It's just like total scumbag behavior.
In the Senate for 36 years, including as chairman and ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. I've been told that I've overseen more Supreme Court nominations as senator, vice president, and president than anyone in history, anyone alive today, I should say. I have great respect for our institutions and the separation of powers laid out in our Constitution. But what's happening now is not consistent with that doctrine of separation of powers. Extremism is undermining the public confidence in the court's decisions. As soon as I came to office, I convened a bipartisan presidential commission on the Supreme Court of the United States, comprised of leading constitutional scholars, both liberal and conservative, to provide recommendations on potential reforms to the court. I've been careful in these deliberations because these are serious decisions. In the face of increasing threats to American democratic institutions,
why is that the only one that's...
I use the Commission's analysis. And today I'm calling for 3 bold reforms to restore trust and accountability to the court and our democracy. As the press shouted to me as I got off Air Force One, the Republican Speaker of the House said, whatever he proposes is dead on arrival. Well, I think his thinking is dead on arrival.
Giga Chad.
First,
Giga Chad
I'm
Biden.
calling for a constitutional amendment called No One is Above the Law Amendment. It holds, and I mean this sincerely, it holds that there's no immunity for crimes former president committed while in office. I share our founders' belief that the president must answer to the law. The president is accountable in the exercise of the great power of the presidency. We're a nation of laws, not kings and dictators. The decision can be boiled down to the title of one case, Trump versus the United States. The court asserted it was making a ruling for the ages. That isn't true. The court made a ruling for one, a former president. No other president in our history has asked for this kind of immunity for criminal actions. And no president, no former president, not me, not one, has and should have been given any exception to this with such immunity. The second thing I'm asking for, we've had term limits for presidents of the United States for nearly 75 years after the Truman administration. And I believe we should have term limits for Supreme Court justices in the United States as well. In fact, the United States is the only major constitutional democracy that gives lifetime seats in their high court. Term limits would help ensure that the court membership changes with some regularity.
Also, like, the Supreme Court has been so unbelievably politicized to a degree that it shouldn't be, but like you can see the way that people, depending on what side they're on and what the leaning of the court is, will either love it and support it to their dying breath, or they will hate it and they will say that is the worst thing that has ever befallen the United States, and we need term limits now. Like, it wasn't it during Trump's presidency where we had conversations. Now, I know this. We had conversations when I first started streaming where everyone was in agreement that Supreme Court justices probably should have term limits. But that's all gone now. All that solidarity is gone because conservatives are winning. It shouldn't be politicized. Yes, that is one thing that I will like 100% like never change my mind on. It should never have been politicized. And I don't know how we have an institution like that that isn't politicized, but I guess we can try to mitigate damage as best as we can. I think that's the best that we can do, unfortunately. I might just like restart a base down here. I think that might be like the move. Yeah, X-Rocks, I agree.
That would make timing for the court's nomination more predictable and less arbitrary.
And ironically, it was during Kavanaugh and Barrett's nomination hearings. Well, to be fair, given all of the other things that happened under Donald Trump's presidency, and given the fact that they did accomplish like one of the things that he said that he wanted to do, it's the one thing that he's trying to like kind of hold on to, but also is kind of trying to walk back, is the, what do you call it? The overturning of Roe v. Wade, which is, again, like a big deal. And again, it's one of those things that I just don't understand why there is the level of like radicalism on both sides on this one for abortion. I don't get that. I don't understand how people became so like this is their one political fight that they must, have. But let me plant the last of these trees. There we go. That speaks volumes. No, I've literally like laid out like at least 3 while we've been talking about this. I don't know what you're talking about if that's the only thing that I've got. Like, they overturned Chevron, which was the like foundational like Supreme Court decision that gave the administrative state as we know it its power. And conservatives have been trying for decades to upend anything to do with the administrative state, which everybody always wants something to be gone until they realize that it's probably doing something pretty important. It's probably something that has a function that we have there for a reason. There might be individual little parts of the administrative state that needed some tweaking or to be done away with, but to like completely upend the system is the same criticism I have of lefties. Like, yeah, we can sit here and we can, try and upend the entire system and try something completely new, or we could, just fix the small things, like fix individual issues rather than try to completely upend the system, which is also an argument that I make to conservatives now because they hate America too. Well, there was a more balanced court until 2020, Doghouse. There was a more balanced court, but one person resigned, another person died. No, 2 people died. The The Republicans got to stack the court through trickery and deceit and lying. The Supreme Court is the way it is right now because of conservatives, because of your crew. They stole a Supreme Court justice, saying that they were setting a new standard, and then they broke that standard the literal next time it happened. There is no defense of that. Wait. No. This is true facts, 100% inarguable. Even the people that did it admit that they lied. Admit that they went back on what they said. I just talked about it. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Lindsey Graham. Oh no, not this narrative? No, I'm talking about Lindsey Graham, who said, hey, listen, we're setting a new standard that if there is a Supreme Court justice that dies in an election year, then we're not going to confirm that person because the American people should decide. The literal next time a Supreme Court seat came up, guess what? They just took it. And he said, you can show me this video if in 2020 there's another situation like this. You can show me that I was, lying through my teeth, but I'm not lying through my teeth. And then he lied through his teeth. And then he was like, oh, well, you show me that clip and yeah, it is pretty bad, but what are you going to do? No, it's stealing a nomination. We have norms in this country. Our country is based off of norms. And if you decide to set a new norm and then you break it the next time so that you can consolidate as much power as you want, you do not care about the values of our country. You care about consolidating power for your side. The Democrats did nothing like that, ever. The Republicans started that. And Republicans that are at least decently smart like yourself should contend with that. You should have something besides, yeah, politicians lie sometimes, Lamau. The reason the court is as politicized as it is right now is because of the precedent that the conservatives put down within the last 10 years, somehow creating a new norm. They were all saying that, Doghouse. Lindsey Graham, the turtle man, what's his name? The one that keeps on having strokes on camera is one. What's his name? The guy from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell. Thank you. It's because politicians elect the Supreme Court justices. Yeah. But they said that the American people should choose in one instance when their guy was winning. And then when their guy was going to lose, they took it anyway. The norm is to confirm a president's Supreme Court justice speedily. They abdicated their congressional duty laid out in the Constitution because it would be better for their side to get more Supreme Court justices. The Republicans set the stage for all of the extremism the entire way. The entire way. They set the stage, and then they cry with their crocodile tears when Democrats even suggest doing something to balance it out. The process is politicized, but I am strongly of the opinion that the justices in and of themselves are not political operatives. They shouldn't be, but right now there are at least 2, perhaps 3 that are. And the conservative justices aren't going to go against the other conservative justices because they already have those ideas in the first place. They want to get rid of Roe v. Wade, which is a pretty normal thing. But then they want to go through and give the president God powers. They want to go through you can say that they're not political operatives, but they are, because there's a reason why it was such a big deal. You want to talk about politicians lying? It is on the Republicans this time, okay? The Republicans did the lie. Yeah, she concurred. She disagreed with Robert's opinion, but guess what? They still allowed the president to have God powers. It's no consolation when they still put through the bad thing.
Reduce the chance that any single presidency imposes undue influence in generations to come. The bipartisan commission I convened.
Congress can pass laws. Yes, Congress can pass laws. What the f*** is your point? What do you think of them striking down Trump's bump stock ban? Probably pro Second Amendment. What answer do you want from me there? That is the one criticism of Trump that I ever hear from conservatives is that he tried to ban bump stocks. That's the one conservative criticism of Trump I've ever heard in my life. And you're going to like use them disagreeing with Trump from the right as a point of proof that they're not like ideologically captured crazy conservative justices? They're lockstep when it comes to doing things that he wants them to do, like give him total immunity, which is like, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep on harping on it because it is the most egregious legal thing that's happened in my lifetime. But anyways, they need to stop relying on legal precedent and actually make laws. Well, you know what? They definitely do try to do that. But Republicans, at least in my lifetime, as long as I've been paying attention to politics since I was in 6th grade, it has been the Republicans who said we're going to obstruct because we have a black man in office. We're going to make him a one-term president, and we're not going to let anything go through. We can go through. We'll do this tomorrow. Okay. We'll do this tomorrow. Okay. We'll watch the video of Mitch McConnell saying we're going to basically make this president from the beginning of his term a lame duck president. We're going to do everything in our power to slow down the process so that this man cannot get anything through. And that was the beginning of the most extreme movement in my lifetime in the United States. It started with them, and then it became the Tea Party, and then it became MAGA, and now we have people that are openly calling for second civil war because they're not getting their way, where they can, forcibly like impose their very hyper-specific morality onto literally everyone so that they can have a dictator because they don't like the fact that Trump didn't get to do literally everything that he wanted to do because he wasn't enough of a good president, enough of a good politician to go in there and actually work with both sides of the aisle to get any legislation through. So all he did was increase taxes on the middle class and lower taxes on the rich, which is actually what happened with that tax cut. I know it, like in the very short term, it marginally helps poor people with their taxes, marginally, but massively cut taxes from the rich, incredibly, like egregiously deficit spent, while everyone like, whoa, look at Donald Trump is the new conservative, like Jesus, and we're going to like paint pictures of him as Jesus getting crucified by Nancy Pelosi, like actual paintings that sold for $100,000. And they want to say that like the liberals and the gay people in the Olympics are the ones making a mockery of Christianity. Give me a break. Conservatives in my country are actually the most subhuman, unbelievable, like crazy people, cult members I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've watched plenty of documentaries on cults, all right? It is one-to-one. The way that the people in Jonestown that all sat together, took their Kool-Aid and died together, the way that the people in, Heaven's Gate all died together. Like, this is the exact same thing that we will see with Donald Trump's people if it gets bad enough for them. Like, they will either try to overthrow the government again, or they will all collectively commit suicide because it is easier to commit suicide than reckon with the fact that they have followed an actual chimpanzee, knuckle-dragging troglodyte into the White House.
Analyze various term limit structures. Based on their report, I believe the best structure is the 18-year term limit. That would help ensure the country would not have what it has now. An extreme court that's the product of an attack on the confirmation process that's been weaponized by those seeking to carry out an extreme agenda for decades to come. By the way, these guys mean it. These guys mean it. Project 2025 is real. They mean it. Third, I'm calling for a binding code of conduct for the Supreme Court.
That should be bipartisan. That should be bipartisan. I don't want to hear any conservative come out against that. That would be insane to say that we shouldn't have a codified, binding code of ethics for the people who set the rules for what the rules can be.
Supreme Court's current ethics code is weak and even more frightening, voluntary. Any code of Congress must be enforceable. Under the reform I propose, justice would be required to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, recuse themselves in cases in which they or their spouses have a financial or other conflict of interest. Most people don't realize that Congress passed a law decades ago that says all federal judges including Supreme Court justices, have to recuse themselves in such cases. But the current justices insist on enforcing that requirement themselves without any public oversight or compulsion. See, that's their decision. They don't have to tell us how they made it.
In a good way?
That might work if the court was actually enforcing those requirements, but they are not. The court is not self-policing. The court is not dealing with the obvious conflicts of interest. We need a mandatory code of ethics for the Supreme Court, and we need it now. My fellow Americans, based on all my experience, I'm certain we need these reforms. We need these reforms to restore trust in the courts, preserve the system of checks and balances that are vital to our democracy. There are also common sense reforms that the vast majority of the American people support, as well as leading constitutional law scholars, progressives, and conservatives. I look forward to working with the Congress to implement these necessary reforms. A number of members of Congress are here today. Let me close with this. President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 just 2 days before the 4th of July.
There is already a process in place for ethical violations, impeachment. Okay, so we should just never change anything. Everything that the conservatives, like the conservative court, going against like the basic principle of the court, which is like upholding and like maintaining stability and not like, you know, going over and like crazily upending every single, you know, decision that the previous courts have made because you personally disagree with them, like not having any consistency in the rule of law. Like, yeah, no, I guess like all that's totally fine. We shouldn't like look into this whatsoever. Yeah, we like the impeachment meme is like if one side of the aisle has in it 51% of the like, or just one seat more than the other side, and they also want to keep the Supreme Court in office, then they can do that. And also, I'm pretty sure something about the ethics code with the Supreme Court justices is they have to, they like self-impose those ethics. And there's an incredibly high, extremely high bar to even prove anything with a Supreme Court justice. So I'm not sure if impeachment even is the right answer. Conservatives, again, one thing that I used to talk about with conservatives and something that we could agree on is that there should be term limits for Congress, for the Supreme Court, for, I mean, the president has it. Why doesn't everybody else? And everyone seemed to agree on that until the Supreme Court started overturning literally decades and decades and decades of precedent. And then all of a sudden the conservatives are like, oh, well, as long as they're doing something that I like, it's totally fine. I don't see how term limits and ethical guidelines are going to upend anything that I want to see. If that upends something that I want, then obviously I wanted the wrong thing. The fact that Clarence Thomas can take millions and millions of dollars of gifts and luxury vacations and shit like that from his conservative friends and then still sit on the bench while deciding a court case involving his friends after they're like paying for like his mom's like end of care life and her house and paying for his nephew's education and all of that shit, and he's getting, you know, multi-million-dollar vacations on yachts with the uber rich, and his wife is getting flown out while he's at work going on these same kinds of vacations, and they're living lives of crazy luxury, and he's on record saying that the amount of money that they get for being part of the Supreme Court is not nearly enough, and that like no one in their right mind would do it if there wasn't some other like way to, you know, entice them beyond just service to their country. Like we have no questions about that. We have no like worries about that. And like the unless we go through a full-on impeachment, there's no way to check that power. What should be the remedy for Thomas? I think that when people talk about removing a Supreme Court justice, I think people go too far, because I don't know if Alito has taken those same kinds of gifts. I think that he's ideologically captured. I think that he's like a madman, but I don't think that he's done anything like as outrageous and out in the open as Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas probably should be removed from the judiciary. And I would say that if it was literally anyone on the left as well, that Democratic senator who took all those like gold bars and favors from Egypt, I was glad that they got him for corruption. I'm glad that they got him for corruption. They should have gotten him for corruption, and they did. They went after him. But for some reason, now we're talking about a Supreme Court justice doing essentially the same thing, but just domestically. And we have to just be like, oh, well, what do you want to do? Like, just like go and impeach him. There should be criminal liability, I think, for something as important as the Supreme Court of the United States, the people that set the rules for what the rules can even be. And you're taking money from big donors and taking in like being pals and all of this shit and sitting on court cases involving them off. Oh, so when was the last time we had an unbiased, unpolitical congressional hearing? Oh, so the impeachment thing was just a red herring? Like you don't even believe in like being able to use the power of the impeaching to get rid of them? Sonso was upset with congressional inaction. I'm upset with congressional inaction and corruption on the Supreme Court. It's actually, it's crazy. It's almost like people can be upset about multiple things at once. But I understand why Congress doesn't get anything done. It's because we have a historically divided America where all of these politicians, there's no agreement to be had. There's no agreement to be had. And so our Congress reflects the constituency. The Supreme Court doesn't. They're supposed to be above that, but they're not. They have shown themselves to not. But what are the consequences if they are not convicted in the Senate? They can hold the impeachment inquiry, but there is no, like, unless they remove them, vote to remove them. There should be the fear that something bad will happen to you if you decide to sell your soul to people who want you to do things in the United States. As an officer of the United States, why is this even controversial? An ethical violation is a pretty high claim because Congress is necessarily a partisan body. I don't think that should be the venue for the Supreme Court. Not in that way. I don't know exactly how it should go. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm a dude who almost has his degree in political science. Almost. All right? But something has to change. And you guys saying that everything is actually like perfectly fine as it is right now, just like you're either lying to me, lying to yourself. I don't know who. Maybe you're not lying. You just like truly believe that everything is totally like peachy keen as it is right now with the Supreme Court. Do you people not have any ethical concerns about a Supreme Court justice essentially taking bribes? Not like if he had recused himself, it would be one thing, but he never even recused himself. The remedy is something that has not been enough to stop them from doing it. Because the ethical concerns are, you know what? I just know that I'm right here. I actually don't have to argue with you guys about this. When I know that I'm right, when I know that ethical concerns should have maybe something easier to remedy than a full-on partisan case where the Republicans obviously have no. Like, the Republican Party has no, what's the word I'm looking for? It's where you don't do something bad because it would be a bad thing for everybody else. Scruples. They have no scruples. They're unscrupulous. They will do whatever is in their best interest. Whereas, like, the Democratic Party, as, like, partisan as everything is right now in the United States, I will say the Democratic Party is miles above the Republican Party in terms of like holding themselves to account when something on their side is doing something bad. Case in point, just look at the guy that just got for being an unregistered foreign agent while being in the Senate, taking bribes while in the Senate. The Democrats will hold their own to account. It took three whole votes in Congress to remove George Santos, who lied about literally every single thing on his resume, who was stealing campaign funds to buy Prada bags and shoes for himself. It took the Conservative Party 3 votes, and it wasn't until after the Republicans found out that George Santos was a drag queen. That the opinion started to shift. That's when the opinion started to shift, when they found out that he was a drag queen. That's what it took. How will we do it? Well, you know what? I don't know. Let's listen to the rest of
He
this.
said in that bill signing, and I quote, "This is a proud triumph. Yet those who founded our country knew that freedom would be secure only if each generation fought to renew in largest meaning," end of quote. That's what I've tried to do throughout my career, inspired by the cause of civil rights. That's what got me involved initially. My state was a state that was segregated by law. We were one who, only reason we didn't fight in the side of the South, we couldn't get there. I'm serious. What motivated me to be a public defender,
I like it when he says he's serious.
county council.
I didn't take him seriously
I
until
had
then.
a good job with a big trial firm. And in Delaware, you have to study for the bar for 6 months before you're allowed to take it. And in the meanwhile, I was studying for the bar. That's when Dr. King was assassinated. We're the only state in the nation, city in the nation, that had the military stationed on every corner with drawn bayonets for 10 months, insisting, because we had a very conservative Democratic governor. In those days, when the Democrats won, they could choose to be part of the Southern Governors or Northeast Governors Conference. They choose the Southern Governors Conference lots of times. But guess what? It got me engaged. I love how reading these biographies of me now that I knew I was going to run for president. I remember walking in to the public defender's office, which was part-time at the time, and asking for an application because I wanted to join the public defender's office. And he looked at me and said, Franny Kearns, he said, "Don't you work for Pickett, Ward, Burton, Sanders?" I said, "Yeah." So why the hell would you want to do this? Not a joke. But I said, "Let me do it." I became a public defender. Folks, here's the deal. Because I got engaged like a lot of you do, whether you run for office or not. You get engaged and you want to change things. So I kept trying to change the Democratic Party in my state, which is very conservative. And then a group of people came to me, as my senator knows, Chris Coons, came to me and said, "Look, we want you to run for state senate." I said, I can't. I can't go to Dover all the time. I'm just starting a law firm. I'm a part-time public defender. And then they came back to me and said, "Why don't you run for the county council?" I said, "I can't." They said, "You stupid SOB, it's right across the street there." I'm serious. Meets only twice a week. So my sister, my best friend, managed my campaign. And we picked a district that we couldn't possibly win. No Democrat had ever won. But my problem was I had my sister doing my campaign. And we won. Next thing I know, I was part of a group assigned as young senators, young elected officials, to try to bring the party around to get someone to run for the United States Senate. And I was put on a commission. When you're the young lawyer, you get to turn the lights on and off after every meeting. And so I remember going down to the Democratic convention, off year, in Dover, Delaware. And after the afternoon session, I went back and I was in my room. There's a nice motel you just drive up to, get out, walk in your door there. And you know, an 8x10 bathroom, a shower, and a stall. And I had my towel around me and a shaving cream on my face, and I heard bam, bam, bam at my door. And I thought it was the guys that came down with. The guy was had a talk show named Bob Cunningham, was a big civil rights guy, and two others. So I thought it was him. I walked to open the door. There was a former governor, former Supreme Court justice, swear to God, the state chairman, and the former congressman. And they said, "We just had dinner." I said, "I'm sorry, gentlemen." And I walked in, I ran to the bathroom, shake the shave grip, thinking I could put something on there with anything here. I walked back out with a towel. I'm standing against a nail, a desk nail to the wall, and they're on the beds that are nailed to the headboards are nailed to the wall. Four of them sitting across. I said, "Joe, we were thinking you should run for the United States Senate." I said, "Gentlemen, you serious?" And they went on and made their case. I hope all of you had a professor who's enlightened his mind. I had one professor named Dr. Ingersoll, my political philosophy professor, at the University of Delaware, which is between Dover and where I was going home. So I called him, I could stop by and see him. And I said, "What do you think I should do?" He said, "Joe, remember what Plato said." I'm thinking, what the hell did Plato say? Seriously. Plato said, "The penalty good people pay for not being involved in politics is being governed by people worse than themselves." And almost spoke to my deceased.
Trump is like subhumanly unintelligent. I don't understand how anybody ever supported him. I don't understand how people still support him. It is beyond me. Like, the more that I learn, the older I get, like, I'm supposed to get more conservative as I grow up, but I'm not. I'm becoming more liberal because the conservatives in my country are insane. Okay? There's not a single redeeming quality about Trump except for he's funny, which is not the sort of thing that I want in my president as their strongest quality. Okay? That's the only thing he has.
Well, welcome. For people that are new, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Kick, I'm Sansol. I am a political science student. I like to talk about politics. I like to argue about politics. We talk about all sorts of fun things on here, like drama and politics. And I like to argue with people in chat about a lot of different things. Like, comment, and subscribe. I don't like to shill. Also,